Okay, how's it going, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in. I just wanted to start by saying thank you for your continued support on this channel. I am honestly grateful to have 30 subscribers. It really does mean a lot. We've grown pretty quickly over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of the discussions we've done here on this channel have mostly been about the heat wave that's impacted much of the central United States, as well as talking about the tropics with Hurricane Idalia making its landfall across the panhandle of Florida and then all the way through the Carolinas. And of course, our thoughts and prayers are with those folks. But a lot of our content has really been surrounded around that. But, you know, there's a lot of talk about the tropics and what's going on in the Atlantic and the potential hurricane development we might see out there in the coming weeks. We have a heat wave to talk about here going into this weekend, with temperatures being anywhere between 95 even up to 100 for, once again, the central United States. But it also is Labor Day weekend, and I want to at least spread some good news and at least something to look forward to besides just spending time with friends and family. We did have something interesting happen here on the sun, and as a matter of fact, that really is the point of this video, is to talk about exactly what happened, what I'm talking about. That certainly will have big implications for folks in the upper Midwest and much of the Canadian provinces going into Sunday and Monday. We actually did see a coronal mass ejection come off the sun just 2 days ago, and that's expected to make its arrival here going into the Labor Day weekend. We're going to talk about what that means for you folks again in the upper Midwest, especially even the Northeast too, along with the Canadian provinces, and we'll look ahead to what we can expect. I mean, we could be talking about some significant northern light watching across these regions. So we are going to be focusing in on some space weather today and possibly into the future for this channel. So if you do enjoy today's content, be sure to like and subscribe, share with family and friends who will possibly be in the viewing area of these northern lights, which you'll find out here in just a moment. And let me know down in the comments below if you enjoy this content, because if you do, we can certainly keep talking about space weather, as it also bears a lot of importance with our planet and sort of, you know, the ramifications of these solar events, especially what we're looking at with this coronal mass ejection. Let's get into the video right now and talk more about it. Folks, let's just cut right to the chase and get right into it. This is taking a look at our sun. The loop itself is over the last 48 hours, and as you can see from this loop, you notice this ejection coming out of the southeastern quadrant. This is what we would call a CME, or a coronal mass ejection, and this is quite a bit of activity coming out of the sun, at least in the last 24 to 48 hours. Now, these coronal mass ejections move at millions of miles per hour, and what happens is, as they make their way towards Earth, in order to protect us from feeling the full effects of that and being killed as humans on this planet, the Earth's magnetic field helps to interact with this, and really acts as this defense mechanism for us to basically live through these types of solar events. And what ends up happening is, as the coronal mass ejection makes its way to Earth, interacts with Earth's magnetic field, that's how you get the northern lights, because it's actually interacting with all the different particles and elements that make up magnetic fields. So say elements of oxygen, or other different elements that really make up that sort of shield, if you will. So the reason why you see these bright colors and these different colors on the spectrum from these northern lights is because the Earth's magnetic field is acting as this defense mechanism against the coronal mass ejection, which in turn creates the northern lights. So because we see this extensive coronal mass ejection making its way towards Earth at breakneck speeds, it would certainly be expected that we are going to be seeing northern lights, not just towards the North Pole, but potentially for areas closer south, even in the lower 48. So let's take a look at some other maps and some metrics here in relation to this. This is looking at the proton flux, and as you can see, look at your spike that happens right around September 1st. This is in correlation with that coronal mass ejection, and that's reflected here on this chart. So if you notice that spike, it actually goes past the SWPC's threshold for warnings, for MEV warnings. So right now, we are currently under a geomagnetic storm watch for this very reason, and that's going to continue into late tonight, into early tomorrow morning. for the lower 48 and pretty much the North Pole periphery. So what I will do is I will leave with you the Space Weather Prediction Center link for you guys to take a look at some more information on that. But just know that we are currently under a geomagnetic storm watch issued by the Space Weather Prediction Center, and a lot of that having to do with the coronal mass ejection that took place on September the 1st, which was yesterday, and in correlation to that, having your proton flux spike the way it did past those warning thresholds. Now, the other thing to take into account here is the planetary K index. And this is what the Space Weather Prediction Center uses in order to sort of define the severity of this Northern Lights event. And as you can see, your spike of the K index doesn't take place until 6 to 12 UTC. So this would roughly be around very early Sunday morning, so tomorrow morning, and going into the early morning hours. So we are seeing K indexes between 5 and 5.33. The next threshold, which would be moderate, would be anywhere north of 6. That certainly is a possibility still. There are questions relating to how strong this magnetic storm will be. But what we can expect here is that, again, the Northern Lights themselves should be much more prominent beyond just the North Pole. We should actually see a lot of activity out towards the Canadian provinces and the lower 48, which I've hinted at a couple of times now, so let's just jump right into it. This is the latest forecast for the aurora, and as you can see, take a look at your time frame between basically now and the rest of tomorrow and even into Labor Day. Notice your props, your probability of auroras, essentially increase within this area. Again, from the Canadian provinces, even getting down into areas such as the upper Midwest. So Minnesota, as well as the Dakotas, even back towards Montana, and then potentially even the Pacific Northwest. But look at the percent chance of seeing auroras going into tomorrow morning. Really spikes up here right in that corridor. I mean, Alaska will certainly see a lot of activity with this, but again, you notice that your percent chances of auroras actually do increase once we get down into the lower 48. And again, that has to do with the coronal mass ejection. When you have that type of magnitude of a CME, that would then correspond with a broader range of northern lights. There still, like I said, is questions in relation to how severe this event will be, but what we do know is that because of the CME activity, that we will see northern lights in a much wider range. And depending on the weather, you might be able to see that Sunday morning for folks in the upper Midwest. I will say, putting back on my meteorology hat, that if you are in the upper Midwest or you're back towards the Northwest of the United States, that even though this is going to be wonderful conditions to see the aurora borealis and the northern lights, we do have to deal with the potential for some scattered cloud cover. There isn't really going to be much in the way of rainfall for you guys here in the upper Midwest, but the one factor that we have to include is that there could still be cloud cover due to a shortwave trough off the west coast that is just producing a ton of surface level convergence and widespread shower and thunderstorm activity. And when you have a lot of that activity in the west coast, sometimes all that stratus deck, those really just cloudy conditions, can continue to meander eastward beyond sort of the convergence region of your trough. It can, I mean, again, this shortwave trough that I'm referring to, which isn't shown on this map, is a closed mid-level low that has a huge divergence, upper-level divergence field out towards the west coast. And so what I'm trying to say is, even though I'm not expecting rainfall for early tomorrow morning's aurora watching for you guys up in the upper Midwest, I would say that there might be some cloud cover to have to deal with. So be on the lookout for the weather conditions going into tomorrow. I still think it should be enough to where you can see the aurora borealis, but if you know folks that are in the upper Midwest, if you know folks that are in the Northeast, friends, family, or even yourself, you certainly want to keep tab on this and get out your telescope and watch the northern lights. And if you did enjoy this video today, be sure to like and subscribe. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, share with family and friends who will be impacted by this potential geomagnetic storm, which will likely produce some pretty potent northern lights for your Labor Day weekend. I hope you guys have a great Labor Day weekend, and we will see you on the next video.